the Western society being moved towards a more softer society, and we're going to be losing in real time to the competitors over in the East.
We already are. We know that China is teaching masculinity to its children. They're teaching combat to their school children. They're removing what they call sissy men from public broadcast channels in the internet. Whereas here in the West, it's embraced. You have public figures like Dylan Mulvaney, who's a flamboyant gay man pretending that he's a woman, landing large social media gigs for public companies, right?
I think what you have in society now is a push towards certain agendas which are taking place, and I don't necessarily have any issues with a grown adult pursuing whatever they want to pursue. But where I think my issue comes is when it's being pushed down your throat through multiple avenues, whether it's going into a
It's
bookstore,
celebrated.
but it's extreme. I wouldn't say it's just celebrated. I'd say it's promoted very, very in the most rigorous fashion possible in every platform, in every metric. We have certain agendas, and it's not just one agenda; it's several. And it doesn't make any sense to me why it's pushed on people. I mean, and then when you're working somewhere, if you don't adhere to the status quo norms,
Mhm.
you get disciplined for it.
Yeah, one of the strange behaviors that they really tend to celebrate to a large degree today is obesity, and the narrative becomes, well, for women, you're beautiful at any weight. They'll tell. We literally have now obese supermodels, is what they call them, plus size models, supermodels, whatever they happen to be. And they put them on magazine covers, they put them on television shows, they tell them how strong and how brave they are, but they don't say anything about their health issues. They don't say anything about their destroyed knees. They don't say anything about their diabetes. They don't say anything about their inflamed gut or any of those things. You can tell these people are not healthy. Men are not attracted to that, but they're trying to convince men that this is attractive. And there's a big struggle with that. Conventionally masculine men that still exist will push back. The softer, weaker ones with low testosterone tend to embrace it because they don't seem to have very many options.
Can I challenge you, Rich, on that?
Let's do that.
Okay, let's say, for example, right, you have a person who is obese, but the reason they're obese is not because of their lack of going to the gym or a lack of diet, but they're obese because they may have an illness of some sort. And we do know, right, there are different illnesses that can cause that, and they can try as hard as they like, but they're struggling to lose weight. What's your thoughts on there,
That's
on
a
that stance there?
very, very tiny percentage of the obesity that exists out there. The vast majority of it is bad lifestyle choices. It's terrible food and not moving enough. That's really what it boils down to. There's no such thing as big bone people or any of the excuses that you've ever heard out there. They just don't exist. There's no dig sites out there where they've been excavating the ruins of Pompeii and they found, oh, we found a big bone person over here. Let's mark that. They just don't exist. So the vast majority are these excuses. But yes, I will agree with you. There are some slight medical conditions, but that's a very tiny percentage.
I agree, and I think even if you do have these, if you have medical issues, and I do think some people are genetically predisposed as well to being more obese than other people, and some people are obviously on the other side of the spectrum where they're just genetic gifts. But I think that irrespective of where you are, what your starting point is, I think you need to do the best that you can do, and you should have a clean diet. You should have a regimented lifestyle where you're going to the gym, you're exercising, and doing the best that you can with what you've been given. We haven't all been given all the gifts of life. Not everybody is tall, muscular, and not everybody's like that. But you got to build that, right? You have to try your best with what you're given.
Correct. Yeah, you've got to do the work, man. Like the work is always required, but I'm telling you, there's a very distinct and strong correlation when I'm at the grocery store between what somebody looks like and what they take out of their shopping buggy and they put on the conveyor belt. Anybody that's out of shape and obese, there's always a distinct correlation between what they eat and what they look like.
So, Rich, obviously you do coaching with people, right? And you've been coaching for a while. Do you find that the way to get men into shape and to get them to chase excellence, not just physically, right? We're also in other dimensions as well, whether it's
Mhm.
business, finances, whatever it is, right? Do you find that that sort of tough love approach works?
Shaming works, believe it or not. I was at a ski lodge a few months ago, and one of the guys in our group who was probably the least out of shape. He wasn't fat or anything like that, but we were talking about physical fitness and strength, and he would be what I would, essentially define as skinny fat. Now, when you're standing amongst your peers and men that are strong, virtuous, are doing things with their lives. Like I essentially just finished having an arm wrestling competition with one of the other guys who's about 20, 22 years younger than me, and I beat him. That says something. You're going to pay attention to the person talking to you. Now, what has he been doing since then? He's been working out, eating right. His girlfriend's been making compliments. She said to him, well, what did Rich say to you that made you change this pattern? And he said, he called me skinny fat, and I was embarrassed. So
Rich, you didn't take his girlfriend off him, did you?
I did not take his girlfriend off him. I'm not that guy. I never do that to my friends. But like shaming works. A little bit of bullying is actually a good thing, I believe. I think that's one of the reasons why we've got a softer, weaker, society. Children aren't allowed to pick on each other in the schoolyard anymore. I wanted to wear nicer clothing because the kids would make fun of my jeans and the patches my mom would sew on my jeans. I didn't come from an affluent family, despite what some people, seem to think based on my life today. But I would then think to myself, okay, well, if my family's not going to buy it for me, then I'll have to make the money and I'll have to go and buy those clothing or those pieces of garments so that people don't make fun of me, right? Because I want to look the part. Yeah, I want to represent, in such a regard. So believe it or not, I think shaming works. A little bit of bullying is probably a good thing for society, and I think that taking it away is not going to serve us well long term.
I think in all seriousness, right? I think particularly with bullying, this is my take on it, right? I think that what they're trying to do as a society is eliminate the external factors and develop a society where everybody is nice to each other. That's just not going to happen. You may get it on the surface, but internally you're still going to get it. And if you start taking the onus away from yourself, because at the end of the day, if the only thing that makes a person depressed and unhappy is what is going on internally, you can't control the weather, you can't control your partner, you can't control anything outside of what is here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't control that, you don't control your brain, you don't control your your training, your exercise, your daily routine, you don't control these things, and you don't control and have a stoic mindset, then you're going to be doomed for failure, irrespective of whether it's now or later. You can switch job, you can open up your own company, you can, a kid can move school, but that's not going to get rid of the issue in that, we could have a situation where you're getting bullied in one school and then that kid could be getting bullied in another school. And it can switch, and that's the way life is. And you have to be robust as an individual and develop a strong mind.
Yes, self-control is an interesting concept, now that you've brought that up, because that's what obesity comes from. It comes from a lack of self-control. It comes from the inability to manage what you put in your face, at the end of the day. It also comes from the inability to, not take your health and movement seriously. Like, moving is incredibly important for humans. We've been moving for millions of years. Sitting on a couch or doing what we're doing right now for an hour is not the best use of our physical abilities, but movement has to be part and parcel of the day. Kids today, not even kids, I would say men, even, as adults, have addictions to things like video games, pornography. Like, these are all coping mechanisms. They're all outlets that they use to try to achieve conventional masculine status, like strength. For example, kids playing video games, or men even playing video games, who might be at the top of their leaderboard, being the number one guy. That's great, good for you. But at the end of the day, if you don't challenge yourself in real life, like if you don't have real life combat, if you don't get into a fight at some point, you don't know what getting punched in the face is like. You think that you're a winner, but you've not really had any adversarial sort of combat in that same thing with porn. Like, masturbation is not sex. It's not even remotely close, but the outlet is used by men today as a substitute for it.
I agree. I think just based on what you said about combat, that is a very interesting point, in that I believe that, you have people who think to themselves, when I get into a boxing ring or I get into a cage, as soon as somebody hits me, I'm going to get angry and but when it comes to it, if you get angry and you start swinging for the fences, you'll quickly find out, right, that a few 1-2 down the pipe, you'll be on the floor very quickly.
Yeah, I think you want to get your opponent angry because he'll make mistakes, and that's when you have an opening. And I mean, that's what I learned in my first fight anyway.
So okay, let's go. Let's talk about your fight, Rich. Tell us the gory details and what happened in the fight. Tell us. Break it down for us. What happened? How did you do?
I wish I could tell you a great story, but it was 3 2-minute rounds. Um, it was very difficult finding an opponent because I'd been training for 3 or 4 years, and I was telling my coach, I said to him, I go, let's test this. Like, what's the point in training if we're not testing it in some form of combat with a bell and corners and all this sort of stuff? He said, okay, fine. I said, I want you to find somebody that's about my skill level and same age. Couldn't find anybody because apparently guys my age aren't stupid enough to box still. So they either don't get started at that point. But he found me somebody who happened to have one fight experience, but he was also 20 years younger than me, maybe 35 pounds heavier than me, and about 2 inches taller than me. So he wasn't ideal, but I approached it from the perspective of I've changed. I've been training for 3 to 4 years. This guy hasn't. He's only had one fight. I've seen his fight. He's a big boy. He takes a lot of punishment, but I deserve the win. I went into the scenario with the mindset I deserve the win. Actually, my trainer gave me this book, to read before the
That's my favorite.
Custom
That's
Mind.
my favorite trainer, Customato.
And one of the things that I took away from was the fear component, because you are scared. I mean, you're putting your jaw on the line. I'm not a young man. When I get hurt, things don't repair themselves very quickly. I feel it for a while. So there was some fear that was involved. So dealing with that was important. Dealing with I don't want to say entitlement, but dealing with the fact that you've put in the work and the time and should walk away with the win was important to me. I brought a few people in that were important to me because I didn't want to let them down. So I kind of put myself in a position where I had to win. It wasn't a knockout win, but it was by a slight margin. And I threw a couple of really good hooks at this guy, man. I got him pissed off with a few jabs, and he came at me and he lowered his hands, and I got a few real good hooks in him. The third one, the last one, knocked his headgear almost sideways. He had to go back to his corner to put it back on straight. But it was a good feeling. It was a really, really good feeling, and it felt natural. It felt right.
Well done, Rich. You represented for the team then, yeah?
I gave it the old college try, man.
Well done, well done. If you enjoyed that clip, click this link over here. It will take you to the full podcast. And remember to subscribe to Be Real TV and follow us on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram.